Welcome students in this second part of the video, the third level. So let's start from here. So in the last video, part 1, I have discussed about the existence of the third level and how the story unfolds, how the narrator, the protagonist of the story, Charlie, introduced himself, and in this video we'll see that how he got transformed himself in the third world, that's third level. I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level, where you take the trains like the 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from, and ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway. So I moved there. Ducked into means moving fast into a place. See, he got himself in an arched doorway that heading towards the subway and got lost That's easy to do. I have been in and out of the Grand Central hundred of times, but I am always bumping into a new doorways and stairs and corridors. Once I got into the tunnel about a mile long ago and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time I came up in an office building on 46th Street, 3 blocks away. So this para is all about the descriptions that how he could sometimes find himself in that third level, that world, that how did he get lost, how could he get himself in the corridors, sometimes in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel, sometimes in the 46th Street. So this is the description. Let's proceed after that. Sometimes I think Grand Central Station or Central is like a growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases like a roots. It's like a tree. Okay. So there is probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about, feeling its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square, maybe another Central Park, and maybe because so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. So I never shared that there is an existence of the third level, third exit. So it was not there actually. When the story starts, that if you remember that it's given that swear on the timetables, stack of timetables, there is the two levels, existence of the two levels. But the third level's existence that I thought that I got into, I never shared to my close friend, psychiatrist friend. The corridor that I was began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong, but I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps. Nobody was there, and I did not pass a soul. Then I heard that sort of hollow roar ahead, that means open space, people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of the stairs, came out on the third level at Grand Central Station. For just a moment, I thought I was back on a second level, but I saw the room was smaller. There were fewer ticket windows and train gates. The information booths in the center was wood and old looking, and the man in the booth wore a green eye set and long black sleeve protectors. So see, the descriptions must underline what was the difference that Charlie noticed. Did he really transport himself to the third level? Yes, he transported himself to the third level. He was in that fantasy world. Everything was different. The environment was different. People dress code was different. Is given that fewer ticket windows, train gates, information booth. That center was wood. All these were different. People wearing that green eye set, long black sleeve protectors. What is that green eye set? Just note down, is important word. It is a type of protector, glass protector, used by the late 19th century people. You can say that used by accountants, telegraphers. Okay, and black sleep protectors also like that. Hmm. The lights were dim and sort of flickering, and then I saw why they were. There were open flame gas lights. Why they were the open flame gas lights? Because there was no electricity that time. Electricity was not there, so use of the gas lights. So these were the differences that he had noticed. Let's proceed after that. There were brass pitons on the floor. What is that brass pitons? Just note down, it is a metal container on the floor in a public place for spitting into. It is a metal container on the floor in a public place for spitting into. So he had seen that brass pitons on the floor across the station. Glint of light caught my eye. Man was pulling a gold watch from the vest pocket. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch, and frowned. He wore a derby hat, black four-button suit, tiny lapels. What is that derby hat means? Derby hat is a round-shaped black color hat. Okay, and then after that, tiny lapels. What is the tiny lapels? It is a folded flaps of a cloth. Tiny lapels. It is a folded flaps of clothes on the front of a jacket or coat. So he was surprised, and he had a, after that, when he was looking to that person, that he had a big black handlebar mustache. What is that handlebar mustache? It is a thick wide mustache, okay, in the shape of a handlebar, very common those days. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the stations was dressed like that. 1890 something. I never saw so many beards, sideburns, fancy mustaches in my life. Sideburns also a strip of hair grown by a man. Okay, down each, that is in the front part of the ears. So it is a strip of hair that comes from the front part of the ears. Very common. Those culture, those attire of the people, they had that different clothes, appearance, sometimes handlebar mustache, sometimes we have seen that what's coming that vest pocket, tiny lapels, are totally different. A woman walked through the train gates. She wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves, skirts to the top of the high button shoes. Back of her out of the tracks, I caught a glimpse of locomotive. So what is that is given that mutton sleeves? That's also important. Mutton sleeves. It is a sleeve that is owned by the woman. Where is that upper arm and the elbow part is narrow down. So is a different dress coding. And then high button the shoes, and if we'll go back the tracks caught a glimpse of the locomotive. What is locomotive? That's company Courier and Ives locomotive. It's also a rail transport vehicle, okay, that gives the power of a engine of a train, power of engine of a train. That's the company Courier and Ives locomotive with a funnel shaped stack. Then I knew everything. So these were the differences. He had been that third level, that imaginary, that fantasy world. People were different dress code, no electricity, open gas lights, brass pitons, totally different that I discussed already. Let's proceed after that. To make sure, I walked over to our newsboy and glanced at the stack of the newspapers. It was the world, very famous newspaper, renowned newspaper, that has not been published for years. The late story that said something about the President Cleveland. I have found that front page scenes in the public library files. It was printed 11th June 1894. I turned toward the ticket windows, knowing that there on the third level at the Grand Central Station, I could buy tickets. It would take Louisa and me anywhere in the United States we wanted to go. in the year 1894, and I wanted two tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. I wanted two tickets. Have you ever been there? It is a wonderful town still, with big old frame houses, huge lawns, tremendous trees whose branches met overhead and the roof of the trees and the streets. 1894 summer evenings were twice as long as people sat on their lawns, men smoking cigars and talking very quietly, the women waving palm leaves fans because there was no electricity, with the fireflies all around, in a peaceful world. And to be back there with the first world war still 20 years off, correct na? 1894, then you will add 20 years, then coming 1914, it's exactly the first world war started. And you will count then second world war, that's 40 years in the future. And I wanted two tickets for that, so it is given the time travels, counting of the time, that's how far he had been of the first world war and the second world war. And that beautiful towns, that Illinois, Galesburg, Illinois, that descriptions is given. Summer evenings twice long, people talking, interacting, men smoking cigars, and the woman waving the palm leaf fans. A very very beautiful sight. Next, after that, moving forward, the clerk figured the fare. Okay, he glanced at my fancy headband, but he figured the fare, and I had enough for the two coach tickets one way. But when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. He nodded at the bills. That's aren't money, mister, he said. And if you are trying to skin me means what? Befooling someone? If you're trying to skin me, the clerk said, that you won't get very far, because he glanced at the cash drawer beside him. Of course, the money was old style bills, half again as big as the money we use nowadays. And different looking, I turned away and got out first. There is nothing nice about jail even in 1894. So he said, "Na, if you try to skin me, then you will be caught by the police." So the narrator said it is very nice to be imprisoned better, because that time jails were also different. Very nice, happy place. And that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day, during lunch hour, I drew $300. He drew $300 out of the bank, nearly all we had, and bought old style currency that really worried my psychiatrist friend. You can buy old money at almost any coin dealers you can get, but you have to pay a premium. What is a premium? That's you can say a sum of added money, that to be given as a compensation, that to be given as a compensation. So that added money, that the premium had to be given. So I had $300, but how much I got? 200 in old style bills, but did not care for that. Eggs were 13 cents a dozen in that 1894. So that premium, that part given, that I had somehow managed to get my tickets by compensating the money, that giving that extra premium. But I never been again found the corridor that leads to the third level at Grand Central Station, although I have tried often enough. Louisa was pretty worried about when I told her all this, and did not want me to look for the third level anymore. And after a while I stopped. I went back to my stamps, but now we are both looking every weekend, because now we have proved that the third level is still there. We have to prove that there is an existence of the third level. My friend Sam Weiner disappeared. Sam Weiner disappeared. He was not found. Nobody knew where, but I sort of suspected, because Sam's a city boy. I used to tell him about the Galesburg. I went to school there, and he always said that he liked the sound of the place. And that's where he is, all right, in 1894. Because one night, fussing with my stamp collection, that I was busy in my stamp collection, that is given the philately, that is a hobby, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? That's given all in a first day cover. What is first day cover? When a new stamp is issued from the post office, stamp collectors buy some and use them to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day. They buy some mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of the sale, and the postmark that proves the date. The envelope is called first day cover. That envelope itself called a first day cover. They are never opened. You just put blank paper in the envelope, blank paper. So that night, among my oldest first day covers, I found one that shouldn't have been there. But there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather at his home in Galesburg. That's what the address on the envelope said. It had been there since 18th July 1894. The postmark showed the date, and yet I did not remember it that all. The stamp was 6 cent, dull brown, with a picture of President Garfield. Naturally, when the envelope came to granddad in the mail, that came to the my granddad in the mail, it went right into the collections and stayed there because he loved that collecting those stamps. And till I look it out and opened it. So the paper inside was blank. So I started opening up. The paper inside was not blank. So every time it's given that it's is blank. It's given that first day cover it's always blank. So it this time it was not blank paper. It was not a blank paper. It read something. What's there? That see the inscription part what was written. So see that address given 941 941 Willward Street, Galesburg, Illinois, 18th July 1894. Charlie. It was addressed to Charlie. I got to wishing that you were right, correct. Then I got to believing that you were right, and Charlie, it's true. I found the third level. Very surprising. I have been here for 2 weeks, and right now, down the street at the deli, someone playing a piano, and they are all out on the front porch singing the Sing Nelly's Home. This is a series of songs, and I'm invited over for a lemonade party. It's a lemonade party. Come on back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It is worth it, believe me. So the note is signed Sam. So it's written by Sam Weiner, the same psychiatrist friend. When the story begins, he did not believe that Charlie had transported that level, that world. But now he had been there, he had written. At the stamp and the coin store I go to, I found out that Sam bought $800 worth of old style currency because he had to compensate also. That ought to set him a nice little hay feed and the grain business. He always said that's what he really wished he could do. And he certainly can't go back to his old business. What is that old business? Being a psychiatrist. So not in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894. His old business? Question mark. Interrogation. Why? Sam was my psychiatrist friend. And now that he had settled the business of hay and grain, very surprising. So the story ends with that conclusive note, that strange note about that how his close friend Sam Weiner also found himself got into that third level. How did he get himself? How that the theme of escapism, that's very appropriate. So there is an existence of the third level. So the question comes, was that letter written by Sam was real? So answer, what would be your answer? That the answer would be that letter was written in that world only. That letter was written that world only. Third level. It was a what that you can say creation of that fantasy world. So when we are in danger and trouble and finding ourselves in problem, landing ourselves in problem, that time we try to create that zone, our comfort level. That's third level. And that's the later and everything what that concluding part of the story happened. Everything about that world only, third level, existence of the third level. So the story is all about what that I discussed when I was just introducing with the text. That's the blending of what? Reality and fantasy. Time travels and theme of escapism. All are intermingled with each other. Okay, thank you students for this class, this chapter, the third level. The next chapter we will see to it. Okay, thank you, have a nice day.